Now that we're handling everything related to ingredients through Redux, we of course should also adjust the other components where we use that ingredient data, namely checkout and contact data. Especially checkout and contact data are super great now that we use Redux, because thus far we used query params to pass our ingredients to the checkout component. This is something we finally can get rid of. So in the burger builder component, where we do pass our ingredients through query params, here purchase continue handler, we no longer need to do that. We can simply remove this method. Instead, we need to handle this through Redux now. We probably still want to navigate on, but I don't want to pass query params anymore. So I can get rid of all that query param code here, and I can also make this push method a bit shorter now and just go to /checkout here. And we can then simply get the ingredients from the Redux store. So our purchase continue handler lives on in the burger builder, but it's much leaner. And in the checkout container, we no longer need to get our ingredients in component will mount like this. Instead, we can get rid of component will mount here altogether. We can get rid of our state, which only handles ingredients and price. We got that in Redux. And we can now import connect from React Redux again, because obviously we want to connect this container with Redux too. So if we go down to the bottom of the checkout container, I'll again create a constant map state to props. And there I still have a function which gets the state and in the end returns a JavaScript object where we map, well, our state stored in Redux store to the props of this container. And there we could have ing's property too. You can name it whatever you want though. And this should hold state ingredients. This cannot be named whatever you want. This has to be the property as you name it in your state. So as in our reducer, ingredients. And of course we also need the price here. So let's fetch the price, which is state total price. That's the property name we use in the reducer. Now we don't need map dispatch to props here, because we're not actually dispatching anything in this container. We just navigate a little bit, but we don't do this through Redux store. We do this through the React router. So there is nothing getting dispatched here. So for now, we only need map state to props. I then wrap this with connect. And here I pass map state to props as the first argument and simply omit the second one, since we don't have a map dispatch to props data field we want to pass on. By the way, if you only had map dispatch to props and no map state to props, you simply would set map state to props to null and pass map dispatch to props. Because map dispatch to props always has to be the second argument, map state to props has to be the first one. So if the first one is not necessary, simply set it to null. Here, however, the first one is the only one we're interested. We're just needing map state to props. With that, we got ingredients and price available through props in this component. Let's use it. So there, whenever we access this state ingredients, this is now this props ings. And when we use the price, well, this is now this props price. Though we only really need it down here where we use our little trick for loading the contact data. Now, thanks to our Redux store, we no longer need to use the tricks, so we don't actually even need the price here because we don't use it anywhere else in this component. So let's get rid of this price prop here in map state to props. And let's get rid of the render method here and instead just set a component we want to load, and that should be our contact data component still. But now not included as a JSX component, but just by pointing to it on the component property of the route. With that, we also need to adjust our contact data, of course. because in there, as you know, we also use the ingredients which we get on props and the price. Prior to Redux, we got it with this little trick we just removed. Now we can simply connect this container here to Redux as well. So for that, in the contact data container, let's also import connect from React Redux. And all the way at the bottom, let's create map state to props here too. Assign the function which receives the state and return our object where we map the relevant state we need in this component to props. And there I want to get my ingredients on state ingredients and my price on state total price was the name. And then as before, let's wrap this with connect, pass map state to props and omit the second argument because we're not dispatching anything here either. And then pass connect data to the function returned by the connect function. Now, of course, we need to update this component too. Wherever we used this props ingredients, we can now use this props ings. Of course, the quickest possible update would be to simply use ingredients here as a prop name, because that's the name we already use. But to avoid confusion with these ingredients we get from the state, I chose to use a different name. So now in contact data, let's update everything which uses these props. We got the order form. It definitely doesn't require updating. And it takes up most of the place in this file. The order handler here, let's have a look. We take a lot of information from our form. And here we pass on props ingredients. This should be props ings. Props price still is correct, because we still map that to a price property in map state to props. So we don't need to replace this. It will already refer to our Redux store though, just as we do for the ingredients. So let's continue. Everything else here looks good to me. And all our input validation looks good to me. The input changed handler also shouldn't be related to our ingredients or the price at all. And in the render method here, we also simply just take care about our form, where we don't really care about any ingredients or the price. So that's all just form related. That's the reason why this container is as big as it is. So the information we need should be there. Let's now try everything out and let's see if it works as it should work. Make sure to save all files, go back to your application, build an example burger here, click order now. The summary looks good. Let's click continue. That looks good too. Let's click continue. Let's enter some dummy data here. So this all works fine. Let's click order. And we were redirected here. Let's now also check Firebase. There in your database on orders, you should see the order you just placed. This is the order. So that all works. We're passing around our Redux state successfully. Now without any fancy tricks, really taking advantage of Redux. And this also hopefully shows where Redux shines. This is not a super huge application, but it is a bit more advanced than just having a to-do list. And here we really make it much easier to ourselves. If we use Redux, we have a predictable data flow and we make passing data around in our application super simple.